I was holding a bottle of crystal hot sauce in my hand when I heard my daughter-in-law say, "Lord, I pray this is her last birthday." The ground just fell out from under me. On my own special day, I learned that, to my son, I wasn't his mother anymore. I was just an obstacle standing between him and a payday. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Share your city below. Let's begin this journey together. It all started on my 80th birthday. The Atlanta sun was heavy that afternoon, pressing down on the tin roof of the patio Big Roy built for me 40 years back. The whole yard smelled of fried catfish and fresh-cut grass, a smell that meant home, meant family. I was standing over the deep fryer just like I always did, turning the golden pieces of fish while the sounds of my people, my children, my grandchildren, my neighbors, laughed and chattered all around me. It should have been a perfect day, but something was off, a little splinter of wrongness under my skin. It was my daughter-in-law, Keisha. She kept whispering with Prince, my youngest, and her eyes weren't celebrating. They were measuring the house, the yard, the old oak tree my daddy planted. Her gaze was a thief's gaze, and it made the air feel thin. I needed to get my special hot sauce from the kitchen, the one I make myself. As I stepped inside, the screen door slapped shut behind me, muffling the party noise. That's when I heard it. Keisha's voice, sharp and low, slicing through the air like a razor. "Lord, I pray this is her last birthday." My breath caught in my throat. I froze right there, my hand on the pantry door, hiding behind the thin mesh of the screen. I had to have heard wrong. "Then we can finally sell this dump and get that condo in Buckhead," she went on, her voice dripping with greed. And then I heard him, my own son, my baby boy, Prince. His voice wasn't angry, it wasn't sad, it was calm, agreeing. "Just be patient, baby. Mama's getting weaker every day. It won't be long now." My heart didn't just break, it stopped. It fell right out of my chest and shattered on the linoleum floor. I leaned against the doorframe, the bottle of crystal hot sauce nearly slipping from my sweaty hand. Big Roy's house, my home, a dump, my life, an obstacle. They were waiting for me to die, my own flesh and blood. For a second, I thought my legs would give out, but then something else rose up in me. It was cold and hard and quiet. It was the part of me that raised 3 children alone after Big Roy passed, the part that worked 2 jobs to keep this roof over their heads. It was the part of me they had forgotten existed. I took one deep, slow breath. I straightened my shoulders and smoothed down my Sunday dress. I put the brightest, sweetest smile I owned on my face. Then I pushed open the screen door and walked back out into the sun, right back into my party, like I hadn't heard a single word. The war had begun, and they didn't even know they'd fired the first shot. A new day started with the sound of their shiny Cadillac Escalade pulling away from my curb. That car was a monument to their success, a success I had paid for. I watched from my kitchen window until the taillights disappeared, and the quiet of the morning settled back into my house. But it wasn't a peaceful quiet anymore. It was the quiet of a battlefield before the fighting starts. My mind went back to how it all began. It started so innocently. After Big Roy died, Prince sat with me at this very kitchen table. He put his hand over mine and said, "Mama, let me help you with your Social Security checks. Don't you worry about a thing." I thought it was love. I thought it was my son taking care of his grieving mother. At first, it was. But then the little comments started. "Mama, you're getting forgetful. Mama, you paid the light bill twice last month." He'd show me papers I didn't understand, full of numbers that swam before my eyes. He took over my bank accounts, my bills, everything. His voice was always so smooth, so caring. "You just need to rest, Mama. Don't you clutter up that pretty head with numbers." He wasn't protecting me. He was disabling me, piece by piece. My eyes drifted across the street to my neighbor, Sister Evelyn, who was out watering her hydrangeas. Those bushes were her pride and joy, explosions of blue and pink that lined her porch. We had lived side by side for 30 years. We had watched each other's children grow up, mourned each other's husbands. She knew me better than almost anyone. I opened my front door and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air was still cool. "Sister Evelyn," I called out, my voice sounding small and shaky, even to my own ears. "I need to talk. Something terrible has happened, and I need your help." She put down her watering can immediately. The look on her face was all concern as she crossed the street, her house slippers scuffing on the pavement. She listened, right there on my porch steps, as the whole ugly story spilled out of me. Her hand found mine, her grip strong and sure. "Oh, child," she said, her voice full of a sorrow that matched my own. "I've seen it. I've seen the way they talk to you, like you're a baby. The way they answer for you when folks ask you a question. I knew something wasn't right." Her words were a balm. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. God don't like ugly, Selena, and what they're doing is as ugly as it gets. "Don't you worry," she said, her voice firm now. "My niece, she works down at a big law firm downtown. She knows one of them sharp sister lawyers, the kind that don't take no mess. We're going to get you some help." That afternoon, I sat in my little sewing room, the quietest place in the house. The sun slanted through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. On a piece of paper, Sister Evelyn had written a name and a number: Tanya Washington, attorney at law. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. This wasn't just a phone call. It was the first shot I was firing back. It was my declaration of war. A day later, Sister Evelyn drove me to the credit union downtown. We went in the middle of the afternoon, a time when Prince was always at work, certain his mother was taking her afternoon nap. Walking into that bank felt different. For years, I'd come here with Big Roy, then by myself, feeling proud and independent. Today, I felt like a child, sneaking around behind my son's back to find out what he'd done with my own money. Mr. Henderson, the branch manager, saw me from his office. He was a man I'd known since he was a boy in short pants, bagging groceries down at the Piggly Wiggly. He came out to greet me himself, a respectful smile on his face, but I saw the worry in his eyes. He'd seen Prince in here more and more, and me less and less. "Mama Selena, it's good to see you," he said, leading me and Evelyn into his office. "Let's see what we can figure out." His voice was gentle as he sat behind his big desk and started tapping on his computer keyboard. The smile on his face slowly faded. He frowned, his shoulders slumping just a little. He cleared his throat. "Well, ma'am," he began, and I knew from his tone that the news was bad. "According to our records, your son Prince is the only person with full access to your savings account." My heart started to beat a heavy, slow rhythm against my ribs, like a funeral drum. "How much is left in there, son?" I asked, my voice quiet. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the computer screen. He took a deep breath. $500. 500. The words just hung there in the air-conditioned quiet of his office. $60,000. That's what was supposed to be in that account. $60,000 from Big Roy's life insurance policy. The money that was meant to be my safety net, to keep me in my home, to make sure I never had to be a burden on anyone. It was all gone. "There have been a series of large transfers," Mr. Henderson added, finally looking at me, his face full of pity, "to an account opened solely in Prince's name." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "Mama Selena," he said, and now he sounded serious, not just sad. "What he's done. This is a crime. It has a name. It's called financial exploitation of the elderly. You need to report this." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small white business card. He slid it across the polished surface of the desk toward me. The name on it was Detective Jackson, Financial Crimes Unit. The world outside the bank window seemed to fade away. There was only that card, that name, and the cold, hard truth of what my son had become. a thief. The lawyer, Tanya Washington, was everything Sister Evelyn said she'd be. She was a tall, sharp woman with eyes that didn't miss a thing. Her office wasn't fancy, but it felt solid, like her. When I told her my story, she didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with a slow-burning anger that felt like my own. "Mama Selena," she said, leaning across her desk, "they thought you were weak, but they were wrong. What's done in the dark will always come to the light, and we're going to get back every single thing that belongs to you." Her confidence was a lifeline. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. "But first," she said, her voice all business, "we need to prove their intent. We need to let their own greed hang them. We need to make sure they can't twist this in court and say they were just helping you manage your money." She opened a drawer and took out a sleek black pen. It looked expensive. "This is a digital voice recorder," she explained. "It's very simple. You just click the top like you're about to write. It'll record everything. We need to get them on tape, in their own words, showing their true colors." Holding that pen in my hand, I felt a surge of power. It felt like a weapon, a righteous one. Feeling that new strength, the first thing I did when I got home was call my friends. I called Sister Beatrice from the Church Missionary Board and Martha, my old partner from our Friday night spades games. It had been months. Prince and Keisha were always making excuses for me. "Mama's not feeling up to visitors. Mama needs her rest." When they arrived, their faces were full of worry, but it melted away when they saw me open the door. Beatrice threw her arms around me. "Lord have mercy, Selena, you're glowing. That boy of yours, Prince, he told us you were failing fast, said you didn't want to see nobody." And right then, I understood another piece of their plan. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my life. He was cutting me off from my friends, from my church, from my joy. He was trying to make me small and lonely, so I'd be easier to control. He was building my coffin while I was still breathing. We sat in my living room for 3 hours that afternoon. We played spades, we drank sweet tea, and we gossiped just like old times. Their laughter filled my house, chasing out the stale air of loneliness and fear. With every card I slapped down on the table, I felt more like myself. I felt the fight returning to my blood. "An empty sack can't stand upright," my grandmother used to say, and my son had been trying to empty me out for a long, long time. But I wasn't empty yet, not by a long shot. That same evening, Prince's Escalade pulled into my driveway again. This time, he was alone, and he walked up to my door with a storm cloud on his face. He found me on the porch, sitting in my rocker, watching the lightning bugs start their nightly dance. I didn't get up. "Mama," he started, not even bothering with a hello. "The neighbors said you had a party over here. Didn't the doctor tell you to get more rest?" His voice had that smooth, condescending tone he always used when he was about to tell me what was good for me. The tone of a parent scolding a child. "Those were my sisters in Christ, Prince. Why shouldn't I see my friends?" I asked, my voice as calm as the evening air. "I'm just worried about you," he said, leaning against the porch railing. He was trying to look casual, but his hands were clenched into tight fists. "Maybe we should stop with these get-togethers for a while. You need your quiet." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it was as solid as the oak tree in the yard. "I will decide who crosses the threshold of my home. This is still my house." His eyes narrowed. This was new. I wasn't supposed to say no. As he opened his mouth to argue, I reached into the pocket of my apron. My fingers found the cool, smooth shape of the pen Tanya had given me. I clicked the top. The tiny sound was lost in the chirping of the crickets. "Prince," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "I want to ask you something. What happened to Big Roy's money? The $60,000. There's only $500 left in that account." For a second, he just stared at me. Then a dark red flush crept up his neck and spread across his face. He looked like a cornered animal. I "I've been using it for your expenses, Mama," he stammered, his voice suddenly 2 octaves higher. "For groceries and bills, and for the doctors." "What doctors?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "I have Medicare. It covers everything, and you know it." My mind was clear. The fog of confusion he had so carefully created was gone, and I could see the truth standing right in front of me. He shot up from the railing, his calm facade completely shattered. "You're getting things mixed up again, Mama. See? This is why I have to handle everything. You can't even remember what you spend money on." He was shouting now, his voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. He spun around and stomped down the steps, yanking open his car door. "I'm just trying to help you," he yelled, before slamming it shut and peeling out of my driveway with a squeal of tires. I sat there for a long time, just rocking back and forth. Then I took the pen out of my pocket, clicked it off, and went inside. I sat at my kitchen table and played the recording. It was all there. The fake concern, the weak, clumsy lies, and then the anger in his voice when he was caught. It was the coldest, ugliest sound I had ever heard, and it was the best proof in the world. The first thing the next morning, I called Tanya. She didn't waste any time. With the recording as proof of his deception, she filed an emergency petition with the court. By lunchtime, every account with Prince's name on it was frozen solid. He couldn't touch a dime. While she was handling the law, I was handling my home. Sister Evelyn's son, JJ, came over. He's a big, gentle man who runs his own construction business, and he treats me like a second mother. "Just tell me what you need, Mama Selena," he said, his tool belt slung low on his hips. He installed brand new, heavy-duty deadbolts on every one of my doors. He handed me a single, shiny brass key. "Nobody's getting in here unless you want them in," he said with a firm nod. "And you just call me if they even look at your house the wrong way. I'll be here in 5 minutes." I didn't have to wait long. They came that afternoon. It wasn't Prince's quiet arrival from the night before. This time I heard the Escalade slam to a stop and 2 car doors slam shut. Then the pounding started on my new front door. It was so loud and hard, I thought they might break the wood. I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see them. Prince's face was pale and slick with sweat. Keisha stood beside him, her face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "Mama, what have you done? They won't let me get to your accounts," Prince yelled, his voice cracking with panic. I stood there, on the threshold of my own home, the new key cool and solid in my hand. "That's right," I said calmly. "It's my money." That's when Keisha shoved past him, her eyes spitting fire. "How dare you," she shrieked, her voice high and shrill. "After everything we've done for you, the disrespect, all the time we've wasted." "Were you taking care of me, Keisha?" I asked, my hand going to the pen in my pocket one more time. I clicked the top. "Or were you taking care of my money?" And that's when the dam broke. All the greed and resentment she had kept hidden behind thin smiles came pouring out in a torrent of hate. "We deserve that money," she screamed, jabbing a finger at my face. "We earned it. We've had to put up with your old lady whining for 2 years. This house should have been ours by now. What does an old woman like you need with all these rooms anyway? You should be in a home." Prince grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with fear. "Keisha, shut up," he hissed. But it was too late. She had said it all. She had handed me the confession I needed, wrapped in pure, ugly greed. I had everything. I looked at the 2 of them, my son and his wife, and I didn't see family. I saw strangers. Strangers who had tried to bury me before I was dead. I slowly and deliberately closed the door in their faces, turned the new deadbolt, and walked away from the sound of their shouting. "We got it all," I said to Tanya on the phone. My voice didn't shake. It was steady. We took the new recording, the one with Keisha's hateful tirade, straight to the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. This time, we met with Detective Jackson herself. She was a serious, sharp-eyed woman who didn't look like she smiled much. She listened to the recordings in her small gray office, her face unreadable. When she was done, she took off her glasses and looked at me for a long moment. There was no pity in her eyes. There was respect. "You are a very brave woman, Mrs. Williams," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You did everything right." The detective didn't just take my word for it. She was thorough. She interviewed Sister Evelyn, who told her about Prince's lies and the way he had isolated me. She talked to my spades partners, Beatrice and Martha, who both confirmed how he had told them I was too sick for visitors. A clear pattern of isolation and control was emerging, a picture painted by the words of people who had known me for decades. But I knew there was one more thing I had to do for myself. Prince's favorite weapon against me was the idea that my mind was failing. He had said it so many times, with such conviction, that a small part of me had started to believe him. I needed to know for sure. I made an appointment with my doctor, Dr. Evans. She ran a full set of tests, asking me questions about my memory, my health, and my life. It wasn't just a checkup. It was an evaluation. At the end of it, she sat down across from me in her office, a warm smile on her face. "Selena," she said, calling me by my first name, "your mind is as sharp as a tack. Physically, you're in great shape for an 80-year-old. Don't you ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Hearing those words from a doctor, seeing the proof in the paperwork she handed me, was like breaking free from a cage I didn't even fully realize I was in. He hadn't just been trying to steal my money. He had been trying to steal my sanity, trying to convince me I was losing my mind so he could take everything without a fight. He had underestimated me. He had forgotten who I was. Sister Evelyn's nephew, Michael, was a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He'd grown up on this street, eating my pecan pie and running through my sprinkler. When his aunt told him my story, he came to see me himself. He sat in my living room with a notebook, but mostly he just listened. The story ran on the front page of the Sunday paper. The headline was big and bold, right under the newspaper's name: "Atlanta Matriarch Fights Back Against Family Betrayal." My picture was there, too. I was sitting on my porch, looking right at the camera. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a fighter. After that, my phone didn't stop ringing. Friends I hadn't heard from in years called to offer their support. People from church, old neighbors who had moved away. But it wasn't just them. Strangers called, too. An old man from Decatur who said his son had done the same thing to him. A woman from Alpharetta who was worried about her own mother. My story was their story. Then Channel 2 Action News picked it up. They sent a reporter and a cameraman right to my house. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one Big Roy always used to sit in, with the lights of the camera shining in my face. I wasn't nervous. I just told the truth. "Age is not a weakness," I said, looking straight into the camera lens, speaking to all the other people out there who were being silenced. "It is wisdom, and my wisdom told me it was time to fight." That news report changed everything. The next day, I got a call from Adult Protective Services offering me resources and support. Then a call from an investigator in the state attorney general's office. My small private war had become a public cause. I was no longer just Selena Williams, an old woman whose son tried to rob her. I had become a voice for the voiceless, a symbol for everyone who had ever been told they were too old, too weak, or too confused to matter. They had meant to erase me, but instead, they had made me seen by everyone. The day we went to court, I wore my Sunday best. A deep purple dress and the hat with the little veil that Big Roy always said made me look like a queen. When I walked into that courtroom, I didn't walk like an old woman. I walked like the matriarch of the Williams family, there to claim what was mine. Prince's lawyer was a slick man in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. He tried his best to paint me as a confused, senile old woman. He'd ask me questions about dates and times from years ago, trying to trip me up. But I just looked at him, calm as can be, and told the truth. Then it was Tanya's turn. She was magnificent. She wasn't loud or flashy. She was like a surgeon, laying out her case piece by piece with cold, hard precision. First, the bank statements, a clear roadmap of my money flowing into Prince's secret account. Then the testimonies. Sister Evelyn, Beatrice, and Martha, all telling the judge how Prince had tried to build a wall around me, and then the recordings. Tanya placed a small speaker on the witness stand. The whole courtroom fell silent. First, they heard Prince's voice, smooth and condescending, then angry and panicked as he lied about the money. Then came the second recording. Keisha's voice, high and shrill, filled the room. "We deserve that money. This house should have been ours by now." I saw a woman on the jury flinch. Another one shook her head slowly. Prince stared at the floor, his face ashen. Keisha looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. I watched the judge's face. He was a stern-looking man who hadn't shown a bit of emotion all day. But as he listened to Keisha's words, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a deep, quiet anger. He'd heard enough. What's done in the dark will come to the light, and the light in that courtroom was blinding. The verdict was swift and severe. The judge looked right at my son. "You preyed on the mother who gave you life," he said, his voice like gravel. "You betrayed her trust in the most fundamental way." Prince got 2 years in state prison, and he was ordered to pay back every single cent of the $60,000 he stole. Keisha received 1 year of probation and 500 hours of community service. And then the judge looked at me. "Ma'am," he said, and for the first time his voice was gentle, "I am also granting you a permanent order of protection. They are never to come within 500 feet of you or your home again." When I walked out of that courthouse, the Atlanta sun hit my face. I stopped on the top step, took Tanya's hand in mine, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I took a full, deep breath. The air tasted of freedom, but I knew my fight wasn't over. It had just gotten bigger. A few weeks later, I walked into the local AARP office and said I wanted to volunteer. I started helping out, answering phones, making coffee. Then one day, the director heard me talking to another woman who was going through the same thing I did. He came over to me after. "Mama Selena," he said, with a new kind of respect in his eyes, "when you talk, people listen. Because you're not talking from a book. You're talking from your heart. You know what you're talking about." He asked me to lead a weekly workshop, a support group for people fighting financial abuse. I said yes, I had found my new mission. Healing doesn't always come like a thunderclap. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a soft knock on the door. One afternoon, that's exactly what I heard. When I opened it, my granddaughter Imani was standing on my porch. She had driven all the way down from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Her eyes were full of tears. "Grandma," she said, her voice choked with sobs. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I had no idea what my father was doing. I am so ashamed." I didn't say a word. I just opened my arms and held her, my daughter's daughter, as she cried. "Child," I whispered into her hair, "there is no blame on you. None. This house will always be your home. You are always welcome here." In that hug, a part of my heart that had been broken started to mend. The line of my family, the real line built on love and not on greed, was being repaired. We spent the whole weekend together, talking and cooking and healing. It felt like coming home for both of us. My story kept growing, spreading beyond the Atlanta news. A state representative, a good woman from my district, invited me to come and speak at the Georgia State Capitol in Atlanta. They were considering a new bill, a law to create stronger protections for elders against financial abuse. I stood at a podium in a grand room with high ceilings and gold trim. I didn't have a fancy speech written out. I just spoke from my experience. I told them how easy it was to become isolated, how sweet words of concern could hide the sharpest knives. I told them that our seniors are not burdens. They are the bedrock of our communities. The bill passed, unanimously. In the news, they started calling it Mama Selena's Law. At the end of the year, there was a big dinner downtown. The governor of Georgia was there. He called my name and gave me a heavy glass plaque. On it were engraved the words, Selena Williams, Georgia's Elder Advocate of the Year. As people stood and clapped, I looked out at all the faces. I wasn't just an old woman in a house anymore. I was a guardian. I was a warrior. My 85th birthday party was nothing like my 80th. The yard was just as full, the air just as thick with the smell of fried fish. But this time, the laughter was real. The love was pure. My home was filled to the brim with my true family. Sister Evelyn was there, holding court by the hydrangeas. Tanya Washington came, looking sharp and relaxed, laughing with Detective Jackson, who was off duty and smiling for once. My spades partners and my friends from the church missionary board were running the kitchen, making sure everyone got a piece of my famous 7-layer cake. The people from my AARP workshop were there, a whole group of us, survivors who had become fighters. My granddaughter Imani was there, her hand resting on her round belly. Her fiancé, a fine young man, stood beside her, his arm wrapped protectively around her. In the middle of the party, the music stopped and Imani tapped a glass with a spoon. "Can I have everyone's attention?" she said, her face glowing. "I have something I want to share." She looked right at me, her eyes shining. "Grandma," she said, her voice full of joy, "we're expecting a baby." The whole yard erupted in cheers and applause. I felt tears spring to my eyes. "And," Imani continued, her voice trembling just a little with emotion, "I wanted you to be the first to know. If it's a girl, we're going to name her Selena, in honor of the strongest woman I have ever known." And that's when the tears finally flowed, happy tears, washing away the last of the bitterness and pain. 5 years ago, in this very yard, my own son had wished for my death. Now my granddaughter was wishing for a new life to carry my name. I had gone from a woman whose end was hoped for to a woman whose name was a new beginning. That was a victory greater than any court case. In the years that followed, my work with AARP grew into something beautiful. We started a project we called Porch Stories. It was a simple idea, an online archive where seniors from all over the country could record themselves telling their own stories of struggle and victory. It became a powerful tool, a library of wisdom for others to draw strength from. My porch, once a place of quiet fear, had become a symbol of speaking out. One day, a letter arrived with a prison postmark. It was from Prince. It was full of apologies and talk of God. He said he was sorry. I read the letter, folded it, and put it away in a box. I forgave him, not for him, but for me. Forgiveness was the final step in my own freedom. But forgiveness and trust are two different things. My door remained closed to him. My peace was too precious to risk again. By my 95th birthday, my body was frail. I needed a walker to get around and my steps were slow, but my spirit was as strong as ever. My house, my home, was filled with the sounds of a new generation. My great-granddaughter, a bright, beautiful teenager also named Selena, stood up to give a toast. She spoke about legacy, about strength, and about how one woman's courage could become a shield for thousands. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one Big Roy loved, a quilt over my knees. I looked at the faces surrounding me, a tapestry of love I had woven myself. The cruel words Keisha had whispered all those years ago, the words that were meant to be my sentence, had faded to nothing. They hadn't been my end. They had been the beginning of my greatest mission. I had taken their ugly, hateful poison and turned it into medicine, not just for myself, but for anyone who needed it. And that was a legacy that would live on long after I was gone. I'm grateful you spent this time with me. If you've lived through something similar or if my story spoke to you in any way, please share your feelings in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Your stories matter too. If you want more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be gentle with yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.